Welcome back to tacNtrack. Today we are going to be talking about the Itiallian M91 38 Calvery Carbine in 6.5.
This is not the smoothest weapon I've ever handled.
You guys have been following along. You know we're getting ready for a World War II shoot-off where we're going to shoot a lot of the main battle rifles of World War II, as well as some of the pistols and shotguns of the war up against one another in a head-to-head competition to learn a little bit more about these firearms, how they work, and how they operate. Ahead of that video, we're going to cover all of these guns in depth. If you're new to the channel, welcome. We've got a lot more of this style content headed your way, and we actually have most of these rifles already done. We're still waiting on the M1 carbine and the Lee Enfield to come in, and maybe if we get really lucky, we'll run into an SVT-40 in time for this. We also have upcoming videos on the German P38 and the French 1935A. So let's take a look at the Carcano. So as we're getting into this, we need to cover Italy, heading through the 1800s and headed up to World War I and World War II in order to be able to understand this rifle and its design. We're also going to talk about the chief designer behind this project. Then we're going to take a look at the M91 38's design, and then right there at the end, we'll take a look at this particular rifle, because this is the rifle we will be shooting in our upcoming competition, and we'll look at this rifle as an individual. Bonus, in the future, we are also going to be talking about the Kennedy assassination, so of course we'll be talking about the Carcano for that too. So that should be coming out in a few months. That'll be a little while before we get to that, but the Kennedy assassination is coming as well, so we'll be talking about Carcanos then as well. So stay tuned for some of the stuff we got coming. Please do me a favor, go down there, hit the subscribe button for me.
If I were a president, I would feel safe if this is what my assassin was carrying.
Alright, so in order to understand this rifle, we've got to take a little trip back in time, and we've got to talk about Italy in the 1800s. There was a lot of war, a lot of infighting going on in Italy during that time period. This is what brings about Italian nationalism and the unification of Italy. Both of those are going to be important for our story today. Italian nationalism is actually what keeps our designer for this guy on board in Italy. It's also what leads Italy into World War II. So, very important time period in order to look at for this rifle. We're not going to cover that in detail, but go check out Italy's 1800s. So, leading up to this rifle, Italy enters World War I with a very similar rifle. The M1891 fires the same 6.5mm round as this rifle. You'll see it right here. It is a bottlenose round, so not quite as ballistically efficient as the Spitzer rounds that we see. They enter World War I with a very similar rifle to this. The sight system is a little bit more complicated. We'll talk about sights a little bit when we look at this rifle. They enter the war with that rifle. After the war, Italy's looking for a new rifle, and they decide to ditch this 6.5mm round. And they decide to go to a 7.35 by 51mm round for the M1938. However, once again, we kind of talked about all of Italy's infighting. All of that infighting had ruined their industrial capabilities compared to the other major powers of World War II, like the United States, Britain, France, and Germany, and they didn't have the industrial capability to be able to make the major rifle change that they needed to in 1938 and to change ammunition. Which brings us to this rifle, and we'll talk about this rifle in detail after we talk about the designer, and we'll go over this design. So this rifle was designed by Salvatore Carcano, or Carcano. Not really sure on the correct pronunciation here. This is a Garand conversation. He was born in October 11th, 1827, served in the military both on an artillery gun crew and worked for artillery repair. As soon as he left military service in 1852, he went to work for the Royal Arms Factory in Turin. This is where he would begin working on Italian designs. So he would not only work on individual rifles, and really this is a trials rifle that has input from a lot of different sources, but he will also work on changes to other rifles to make them better for Italian service. He was offered several jobs outside of Italy that certainly would have paid him much better and probably would have advanced his career much better. But he was a nationalist who believed in a unified Italy and stayed in Italy in order to work on designs like this one. So let's take a look at this particular design. So there are several different versions of the M91 38. The one that we're talking about today is the Calvery Carbine version, which has the shorter 17.7 inch barrel. This particular version also has a permanently affixed bayonet. So we're going to start at the tip, work our way all the way back to the butt. Then we'll talk about two particular parts of this rifle in a little bit of detail. We'll talk about the bolt and how it differs from some of the other designs on the market at the time period, and the magazine feed system, because the magazine feed system is different from any of the other rifles that we've talked about. So let's go ahead and start up here. Of course, no muzzle device. We do have a simple style blade front sight. We have this permanently affixed bayonet. It's got a button on the left side of the receiver. Press that button and allow it to slide backwards, out, and then we can fix it up in this fixed position. Bayonets are still considered essential in World War II in rifle design. However, almost nobody actually uses them besides the Japanese. Some of the other versions of this rifle will have a fully enveloped front handguard. On the ones with the permanently affixed bayonet, we see this handguard's been cut back. We've got a rifle swing swivel right up here on the front. Then we get to our rear sights. So our rear sights are a simple V-notch cut, and they're pretty straightforward. One of the beautiful things about the 6.5mm cartridge is it's a relatively flat shooting cartridge, and we'll talk a little bit more about the cartridge when we talk about the magazine and feed system. We also see this front sight does have a secondary pop-up sight with adjustments for longer range, anywhere from 600 yards to 1400 yard adjustment in this secondary sight. Split bridge receiver gun. Of course, the magazine and trigger guard we'll kind of talk about in a minute. It does have a fairly good trigger. Now, the bolt, when we talk about it, it's not quite as smooth as some other designs out there on the market, but the trigger itself is quite good. As we travel back down the stock, pretty traditional stock setup, metal butt pad. We've got a second swivel back here in the back for our sling. So let's take a look at that bolt. So a lot of the World War II bolt action rifles that we talk about are often Mauser designs, Mauser inspired. You know, there's Mauser in there somewhere. This is most definitely not. So let's start with how to pull the bolt. Take the bolt to the back of the receiver. Once again, it's a split receiver. Pull the trigger, and the bolt itself releases from the firearm. This is a significantly simpler bolt than what we see in a Mauser, and almost has some design characteristics like the Mosin Nagant bolt. We will notice two big locking lugs up here. We have a 45-degree bolt handle on these, and we can see when this rifle's cocked because back here this actually protrudes further when cocked, and it does have the ability, like the 1903 Springfield, to be cocked without racking the rifle. You can grab back here on the back, pull it back, and recock the rifle. Something that we don't see on a lot of designs. We also have this safety. So this safety is relatively stiff. So let's put this back in the rifle and take a look at how this safety works, how it operates. So in order to use this safety, you push in on it and rotate it 90 degrees. Now with this safety up, as we look down the sights of the rifle, it almost gets in our way, so it's a little bit easier to tell if the safety's on. However, this rifle, because it requires it to be pushed in, has a bad tendency to, when you try to engage the safety, for it to actually pull the charging handle up and decock the rifle and get it out of battery. So not my favorite safety of the guns. As a matter of fact, of all of the World War II guns we'll be shooting, this is probably the most difficult to use safety. And it requires almost as much effort as the Russian rifle did, as far as how much effort actually goes into turning it on and off. So let's take a look at this bolt, because it is very simple. We do have a gas port on this to allow some gases to escape. It's not as good as what we see on the K98. It has a very small extractor on it, very similar to what we see in the Mosin, but remember, this isn't a round cartridge like the Mosin was. But overall, very, very simple bolt design. The next thing that we need to talk about is the magazine on these. Alright, so let's talk about the feed system of the Carcano. So we've talked about the M-block clips before. This is an M-block clip out of an M1 Garand. We'll notice it's double stack, and the way that the Garand operates, if you watch that video, it expels the entire clip out of the top once the last round has been fired. What we see with the Carcano is a little bit different system. It's a 6-round M-block clip. What we also notice is this is a single stack instead of a double stack M-block clip, and it functions a little bit differently. When the last round is chambered, the entire clip drops out of the bottom of the rifle. So the entire M-block clip goes in the top of the rifle like this, then will drop free out of the bottom of the magazine. So why is the drop out of the bottom of the magazine a big deal? Well, this is an exposed hole in the bottom of the rifle that will allow dust, dirt, debris, mud to get into the rifle itself and get into the action. Now, I think for our competition and the way that we're going to be shooting these, the additional round capacity of 6 over the 5 that we see in the K98, the Mosin Nagant, and the 1903 will do it some favors. I also think the flat shooting 6.5 will do this rifle some favors. But what we won't see is the negative side effect of this open magazine down here on the bottom. One other thing that we have to talk about when we're talking about the 6.5 Carcano round is the power. So for some degree of perspective, a 9mm puts about 400 joules on target, whereas the K98 or the 30-06 firearms that were common at the time put about 4,000 joules on target. So where does this guy fall? It's going to put 2,500 joules on target. So by no means a powerhouse in compared to its near-peer adversaries. A little bit lacking in power compared to some of the others. It's also moving a fair amount slower. These rounds move at about 2,300 feet per second, whereas the 8mm Mauser's moving at 2,700 feet per second. So it is slower, delivers less energy on target. However, it is a very flat shooting cartridge. I think that they may have been a little bit ahead of the curve here, because as we go past World War II and into the Cold War era, we see a lot more of this size and power range cartridge being used over the higher horsepower 8mm and 30-06 rounds. The US goes to 308, and then of course down to 223. The Russians go to 7.62 by 39, and just now we're starting to see 6.5 powered cartridge similar to this entering the civilian shooting market, because this is a very good compromise. With that being said, still not quite the power. So if you were running a pure penetration test I think that the 6.5 would lack a little bit. So with the magazine, the bolt, the overall design of the M91 38 out of the way, let's take a look at this particular example. So this particular rifle came from Palmetto State. Now, Classic's got them right now. This is actually one of the few World War II surplus rifles that you can actually readily go out and buy right now. Classic's got them, Palmetto's got them. They're sub $300. What is hard to get is the ammunition. So this is one of the reasons I hope this rifle doesn't make it too far in the competition, is the ammunition is expensive and hard to find. But PPU is still making the ammunition for these. It is a little bit hard to come by. So by all means, save your brass. It's hard to find bullets for them too. So, you know, that's what makes owning and shooting one of these rifles a little bit difficult. But they are available right now. Overall, I think this particular rifle is a pretty good example. One thing that there's no rusting, there's no pitting, the action fits together well. Of course, it's a military surplus rifle. This is not a pristine example. You very rarely see these that are actually in pristine condition. I was watching a video of Mussolini's assassination the other night, and there were some really nice ones then. But most of these, by this point in time, have a little bit of damage to the stock. But overall, I was very pleased with the way that this rifle came in and this rifle's condition. Really, overall, very, very good condition. This particular one is a 1941 example. So certainly dates in the correct time period for us here. And overall is in pretty good shape. This is one that I was very happy with when it came in, unlike when we were talking about the Mosin Nagant. As soon as the Corvette clock gets done here, the one gripe that I do have is this top section of the handguard does not fit this rifle particularly well. It's really the only gripe as far as condition that I have with this guy at all. And really, at the sub $300 price point, you should probably go out and grab you one while you can. Pretty good little deal. This is maybe not as good as a Mosin Nagant as an introduction to this era of rifle, but it is certainly a deal that you can get today. And grab these up before they're gone, because they will go away. And once these rifles kind of disappear off the market, their price will go up and they'll become harder and harder to come by. But right now you can get them. Palmetto's got them. Classic's got them. You can play Russian roulette with Royal Tiger Imports if you want to. They've got them in stock as well. So guys, I hope you enjoyed learning a little bit more about this gun. Please hit that sub button down there for me, because we're going to be bringing you a lot more of these. If you're interested in these guns too, we've done videos on most of these here. We've got the M1 Garand, the 1897 shotgun, the 1935 French A model, and the German P38 videos still upcoming. Hopefully we'll get our hands on a Lee Enfield, and if we're really lucky, we might be able to borrow an SVT-40 for this as well. So all these are coming, and then we're going to do a big World War II shoot where we're going to shoot all these in a competition style setup up against one another head to head, and learn a little bit more about these rifles than we can learn here on a workbench. Thanks for checking us out today on tacNtrack.
Artlist.io.
Around a lot smoother. Jammed up again. Yeah.
Music licensing reimagined. Artlist.io